All right, so a sneak peek at my speech for Konak, put on by HiveMQ in Munich, Germany, in just a couple of weeks. Take 0. All right, so a lot of people have reached out to me and asked, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be speaking at Konak in Munich, Germany in a couple of weeks, December 7th. HiveMQ is putting on the Konak MQTT Summit. So essentially, a bunch of speakers are coming, thought leaders in the MQTT space are coming to have a conversation and talk about the future of MQTT. We're going to talk about the past, we're going to talk about the present, how it's currently being used, and we're going to talk about the future. My speech is all going to be centered around what I believe the future of MQTT should be. And you've heard me talk many, many times about the types of additional software support or functional support, I think, that needs to be in the MQTT spec, in the future specs. Rick Bellotta and I have gone back and forth a million times on this. Rick has helped me. Rick Bellotta, Matt Paris, and I, they're really the two big ones that I've had most of the conversations with, centered around where I think MQTT should go. And I think the three of us in general are in agreement about the core elements of where we think the MQTT spec should go. So I'm going to talk today about 3 primary features I'm going to be proposing for the MQTT spec. Now, there will be lots of questions here centered around, well, Walker, why does it need to be in the spec? Why can't it just be somebody take the MQTT spec and then build these features in their own solution? That's great, but I think for industry, I really think that the MQTT specification should break off and there should be an industrial specification that inherits from the primary specification for MQTT that should include these features. So first and foremost, I think there needs to be GraphQL support, okay? And I'll explain here in a minute all these. The next thing I think we need to have is method support against the broker. And last but not least, we need microservice support. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the microservices component here, okay? Essentially, we want to be able to use microservices to self-discover MQTT nodes and then use those microservices so that we can like load balance the handling of message responses, subscriptions, and publishes across a microservices layer. I'm not going to get into that piece, but I am going to go through the GraphQL and the method support elements in relative detail. Okay, when I say I want GraphQL support in an MQTT broker, I'm actually going to review my presentation here so that people who see me present in Munich are going to hear the same message that I'm getting here and I'm not just riffing it. So first and foremost, when it comes to GraphQL support, what is it I'm talking about? I'm really talking about 3 elements. So in my presentation, I have the header GraphQL support for querying the broker namespace. The objective is to integrate GraphQL to enable dynamic and efficient querying of the MQTT broker's namespace to discover topics based on specific characteristics. So here's what I mean. What I mean is I have a broker over here, okay, and then I have a client that's connected to that broker, okay, an MQTT client and an MQTT broker. The MQTT specification has entries in it for how brokers should be built and how clients should be built. What I want is I want to have in the broker, I want support for GraphQL. So this would be a GraphQL server that I could run a GraphQL query from this client to the broker to query the namespace based on specific criteria. So for example, a really good example would be something like, I want to find this client, I want to find all topics in the broker namespace that look like that have the pattern QC underscore in it, which is going to indicate that that is a quality control namespace element. Okay, so it would be QC underscore element, QC underscore element. Okay, and the query, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to run a query where I go, and I actually have an example query that we wrote, where I'm going to go query, and then we're going to say find topics, which we would define this query, okay, in the specification, find topics, and we're going to use a filter, okay, and then we're going to open brace it, and then we're going to say naming convention, where the naming convention is QC underscore. And then obviously close, 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 and then we want to return topic name and last message time, okay? That's an example of a query that I want to be able to run from an MQTT client to go find the list of all the topics. These will be fully qualified paths of all the topics that are in the broker that have QC underscore, okay? The other thing I want to be able to do is I want to be able to look for a specific type of pattern, okay? So a similar one would be, I want to find topics, filter, where the section is assembly, painting, or packaging, right? And then what it's going to do is it's going to return all of the topics that are either in assembly, painting, or packaging, and it's going to return a list of, say, the sensor types, topic names plus all the sensor types. So what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to query the broker. If we're building a unified namespace where the structure of our business is a semantic hierarchy based on ISA 95 Part 2, then we need a mechanism to query the broker. The way we currently do it, so what's the workaround that we currently use, and the reason we want to do it this way. And obviously we could build this. I could write a broker that is going to do this for me. In fact, I could write the package that does this, and we kind of do. But what we currently do is we take the broker namespace, we connect Apache NiFi or Kafka to it, and then what we do is we stream all of the topic, each event we store in a data lake, generally in Amazon S3. And then what we do is we use regex to look for these patterns in Amazon S3 to return the list of the topics that have those patterns. We do most of that like in Python. And once you write your client, your monitoring application, you just use it over and over and over again. Everything is dynamic. But the problem is that it really, if what we want to do is get to a digital supply chain, the idea of the digital supply chain, the type of features that we build, that IntelliC integration and 4.0 solutions builds using MQTT, they need to be standardized features across all manufacturers. We don't work with every manufacturer. So if you go to any of the manufacturers we work with, you're going to have this type of support where we can browse it, we can query the namespace either using regex or some other tool. But what we really need is that in the standard. So number one, I'm going to be presenting on this, and I'm giving a lot more examples. I'm actually using 4 use cases. I'm giving 4 value propositions and manufacturings for each of these proposed features. So there's actually 4 examples. I gave you 1.5 here, and my presentation in Munich goes much more in depth on what I think needs to be added. In fact, I have a proposal for how the specification should be modified. This is actually an important lesson in business. Don't go to people with the problem, go to people with the solution, and provide the solution in context of the problem, okay? So bring the solution with you and then let them take it where they want it to go. All right, so number one, GraphQL support. You know, there's been, Jeff Noonan and I have gone back, you know, Jeff, who's the guy at Brilliant Architect, have a huge amount of respect for Jeff. But he and I definitely disagree. For some reason, Jeff definitely disagrees on, I don't think he really understands how we want to implement GraphQL. We actually wrote a specification already for GraphQL support in MQTT, and I really think it needs to be adopted by the MQTT standards body. In fact, what I really think needs to happen is you have the MQTT 5 standard, and what we need is a breakoff that is the industrial standard, which is an extension of 5. So essentially, the 5 standard would fit completely inside of the industrial standard. The industrial standard would then add in these additional features, okay? Now let's do method calls, okay? So I want to see method support for both brokers and topics, okay? So let me read my specification here. All right, so what we want to do is we want to enhance MQTT. This is actually from my speech. We want to enhance MQTT by introducing methods for both the broker and the individual topics. enabling more versatile interactions. Okay, so for example, again, we're going to have we'll put our MQTT client out here. And then we have our broker here. So the actual support, so like Paho would have to add this type of support into their Python libraries. The actual support for methods is actually going to run both in the broker and the client. So both parts of the specification would change. So what we would have is we would have two types of methods to start. We'd have broker.method, whatever that method is, and we would have topic.method. Now, I'm not suggesting that we limit it to topic.method and broker.method. What I'm suggesting is that's where we start. Eventually, I'd like to get to payload.method, okay? But let's just go with broker.method, topic.method. So the potential, we'll have broker level, which is going to include functionalities like broker health checks, performance statistics, dynamic configuration updates. It could also be things like connected clients. It could be total throughput. A lot of it's like statistical-based stuff, which primarily that information, if you look, the way that methods are, or that where that data comes from is inside the $sys namespace in a broker. The standard has a sys namespace in it, and then you put in a lot of the broker information, but it's incredibly limited. What ends up happening is the broker OEMs like HiveMQ and EMQX, they add all these additional features that are not required by the specs, but they are required by industry. So what we really need is a specification that includes all the basic stuff that we need in industry, so that if I'm gonna go across any EMQX installation across the globe, or I'm going to go across any HiveMQ installation, or I'm going to go across any CirrusLink implementation, or any Litmus broker, or Microsoft's new E4K broker, I know broker.method is going to be there, okay? At the minimum methods, all right? We want to have methods for topic management, such as dynamic access control, and I'll show you an example there, topic metrics, or custom event handling. So obviously the benefit of doing that is we're going to add a layer of sophistication and control over the MQTT interactions, and then we'll ease the management and monitoring of MQTT brokers and topics. Okay, so here's an example of a method right here. So the first one would be something like against the broker, we would run something like MQTT.broker health check. And what it would return is whatever is in the specification to tell us the health of the broker, okay? Number two would be a topic-based method, okay? Where we would do something like MQTT.topic.set access control. And then what we would do is we would pass in the name of the topic, and then its new access control, which might be, say access level restricted. Okay. You might have MQTT topic.lifespan. Okay. And it would be, we want to retain the value, but we only want to retain the value for 2 hours. Right now, when you do a retain flag high, retain is always true. What we might want to be able to do is we might want to say, you know what, we want retention so that if a client connects to the broker after the message was sent, we want that client to be notified of what the last value was, but we want to set a value on when that expires. So the lifespan would be, this is only going to be, the value is only going to be good for 2 hours, and then the value will become null, okay? Another one would be, get metrics. So MQTT.topic.get metrics. Another one would be MQTT.topic aggregate. We could run analysis methods against the topics in the broker. Obviously, if you look, anybody who's watching this should be like, you know what? Wow, that's fucking pretty sick. Like if I have GraphQL support and now I can use GraphQL to query the broker, especially these huge brokers, to query the broker for certain data models or certain types of assets across my organization, I can do that much more elegantly instead of just subscribing to the entire broker and then iterating through all the topics to try and find a pattern. What we're going to use is a query language that's going to return the result for us. Okay, and that's just one example of how GraphQL could be used, inside an MQTT broker. But this big one here is the method support. The ability to run a method where I make a call, set access control, and that call goes to the broker and now fundamentally changes the future of that topic just from my client, all right? And then obviously the access control of that client, the client's ability to do that is greater extent. Right now, that type of stuff has to happen. You generally have to go to the broker and either go into the broker's web service to do it, or most commonly, you have to go into literally a text configuration file and put in some line that the broker would then parse to say, oh yeah, the access control limit for this type of topic is X, Y, or Z, okay? So in a nutshell, that's what I'm gonna be talking about. So when I go to Munich in the beginning of December, I'm gonna be talking about the future of the MQTT spec. Where does it need to go? And here, let me say this. Do I believe that I'm going to go to Munich and I'm going to get the members of the working group to just go, you know what, those are all awesome ideas. Let's go get to the drawing board and get them implemented into the spec? Of course not. Obviously, what's going to have to happen is we're going to present on the idea. People will listen. There are going to be people in the audience who are going to go, you know what, I can monetize that. Litmus Automation, maybe Litmus Automation, who has, they use artificial intelligence and machine learning as a lever for all of their software development. Maybe they could develop these features much faster than anyone else. And in fact, that's a call to action to Vatzel. If we could, hey, once I give this pitch in Germany on how we need this type of support in the MQTT spec. By the way, this is not all inclusive. There is a long list of things we'd like to see added. I want to start here. Microservice support, by the way, is greatly needed for managing large infrastructures, okay, number one. But ultimately, I think the way that these are going to be implemented in the specification is through them being implemented in a commercial product first that gives it a competitive advantage over all of its peers. This is the biggest thing that you're looking at, like the market is changing right now with MQTT brokers. For the last 2 years, it's been EMQX and HiveMQ. Chariot SCADA, which is Cirrus Link's broker, while it's an outstanding broker, nobody even seems to know about it. And it's because of their go-to-market strategy. They really they don't do they're focused on making money on their modules rather than making money off of their broker. But it's an outstanding broker. I would say that those are the three big brokers that, Vern, and there are some others out there that I think are impressive, but the two brokers that everyone's been using is EMQX and HiveMQ. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes fucking Litmus, and Litmus develops a broker that is designed to be more performant than the existing brokers we have right now. That's literally the reason they built it. And then right on the heels of that, Microsoft moves up their announcement of their new Azure IoT that includes their E4K broker, which I posted about in a LinkedIn post in August or September when I finally got wind of it. So what we've got is there are more and more players coming into the market with MQTT brokers, and all of them want a piece of the pie. And the reason I'm speaking on this now is you got Litmus, you got Microsoft, you got these other broker OEMs, and if what they want to do is differentiate in the market, my guess is the person who's going to win is the one who's going to adopt these ideas first, or at least one of them. And by the way, method support is the one that I'd jump on first. It's the easiest one to implement. Their APIs already exist inside the broker to kind of for these web services. So all you're really going to do is write a method that's an API that's going to make that call, and then you're going to return it to the client. So in any event, feedback on this topic is very, very important to me. So if there's ever a video you're going to write a comment on, if there's ever a video when you're going to say, you know what, Walker, I fucking love this idea, or Walker, I think you need to add X, Y, or Z to that list, this is the video to do it in. We are going to monitor this video very closely. You have between now and when my flight is Monday of, so 2 weeks from now. So we're going to publish this video on Tuesday, whatever the date is today. This is the day of the week of Thanksgiving. Hold on. So today is Tuesday, November 21st. So the video publishes today, Tuesday, November 21st. You have until, say, December 3rd to influence my speech. So the comments down below between now and December 3rd, they're all going to be heard. We're going to monitor this very closely. I would love to hear your feedback. A, on my decision to only focus on these 3 features, number 1. And number 2, are there any other features I must touch on that you'd like me to put on a slide and say, hey, we'd like to see this, this, and this. I have a long list. I'm going to share a lot more of this in the Discord server. But I would love to get your feedback. All right. Hopefully that's clear. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment down below. Please comment down below. And I will see you in the next one.